Moments like these don't come every day, sweetheart, he said, his voice dripping with sleaze. It's women like you who bring life to this boring clinic. His bold words made my skin crawl. I sat frozen as the young doctor smirked, his eyes filled with something vile. Slowly, he began raising his hand toward my face. I was hooked up to an IV, completely vulnerable, completely under his control. I wanted to call out to my mother. She was just behind the curtain. But before I could speak, he pressed his rough hand over my lips and shoved me down on the bed. A sharp pain shot through my wrist from the IV line. My chest tightened with panic. Then I heard him say calmly to my mom, "Ma'am, don't worry. The drip will take some time. You can head home and come back in half an hour to pick her up." My heart sank. I struggled like a fish out of water, desperate to free myself. But my mother, trusting this man without hesitation, had already walked out. He laughed, a chilling, echoing laugh that filled the room. That was the moment I snapped. Fueled by rage, I kicked him hard in the stomach and ripped the IV needle from my arm. Pain exploded through me, but I didn't care. I ran. I was about to scream for my mother when I felt his hand around me again. That man, that predator disguised as a doctor, grabbed me from behind. And the next moment, the first time I ever stepped into that clinic, I was with my mother. I had been dealing with persistent headaches. We had just moved into a new neighborhood, and this clinic was the closest one around. My mom thought it would be convenient. I was 16 at the time. We waited a while in the small reception area. When I was finally called in, I walked into the doctor's office. He looked up at me and just stared. For several seconds, he didn't blink, just stared. I could feel his gaze, and it made me uncomfortable. I won't lie. People had always told me I was beautiful. My skin was pale, and whenever I got sick, my cheeks would turn red like roses. At school, I had often noticed boys staring. Some tried to talk to me, even ask me out. I never gave them any attention, but I knew they looked. And honestly, a part of me liked being noticed. But I was always terrified of my mother. If she ever found out I was talking to a boy, I didn't even want to imagine what she'd do. Back in the doctor's office, I instinctively adjusted my scarf, trying to shield myself. That seemed to snap him out of his daze. He quickly shifted into a professional tone and motioned toward the chair. "Have a seat. What seems to be the problem?" "I've been getting terrible headaches," I said. "Every time I try to study, the pain starts. The moment I open a book, my head starts pounding. I don't know why it happens." He smiled and tilted his head. "You're not using your phone too much, are you?" I looked at him, startled by the sudden question. Before I could say anything, my mom jumped in. "Oh, if she had her way, she'd glue that phone to her forehead like jewelry. She's always on it. No headaches then. But the second she opens a textbook, suddenly she's in pain." She had started scolding me right there, in front of the doctor. I stared at her, embarrassed, silently begging her to stop. But she didn't. The doctor chuckled. Watching us argue seemed to amuse him. I was in 10th grade at the time. The doctor wrote me a prescription and said, "Take these medicines regularly, okay?" I nodded. "All right." Then I left the clinic with my mother. Later that evening, I took the first dose, and to my surprise, the headache that had been haunting me for days vanished. Just like that. Honestly, I hadn't expected much. I thought this neighborhood doctor wouldn't be able to help at all. But that one dose worked like magic, as if the pain had never existed. A few days later, though, I started having stomach pain. It would always begin at night. One evening, the pain became unbearable, sharp, twisting, relentless. I started crying out in agony. My mother rushed into the room, panicked. "What's wrong with you? What happened?" "I don't know," I cried, holding my stomach. "It hurts so bad I can't take it." My father worked abroad, so it was just my mom and me at home. Without wasting a second, she helped me up and took me straight to the same clinic. It was only a few steps from our house and stayed open 24 hours a day. The doctor lived in the apartment upstairs, so whenever there was an emergency, he would come down quickly. When we arrived, I was moaning in pain. There was no nurse on duty, Pamanes, only a ward boy who immediately called the doctor. Within minutes, the doctor came downstairs, clearly half asleep. His eyes were barely open, as if he'd been pulled from a deep sleep. He went straight into the examination room. My mother took me inside. I was clutching my stomach, doubled over in pain. He told me to lie down on the foldable bed. Then he turned to my mother and said, "Ma'am, please wait outside so I can examine her properly." She nodded and stepped out. He shut the door. I was barely conscious from the pain, disoriented, drained, and completely unaware of what was going on around me. The doctor stood beside me and began asking questions. "What did you eat tonight?" I told him everything. There was nothing unusual, nothing that could have triggered pain like this, but then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Lift your shirt a little," he said casually. I froze. "No," I replied firmly. He leaned in closer and whispered, "I'm your doctor. There's no need to hide anything from me." His face was inches from mine. That same smirk lingered on his lips, soft, calculated, manipulative. I turned my head away from him and placed my hand firmly over my stomach. "You can examine me like this. I'm not lifting my shirt." I glanced at the door. My mother was still just outside. "Call my mom in first," I said. "Only then will I allow anything." His smile faded. There was irritation in his voice now. "What are you saying? There's no modesty between a doctor and patient." "That's not how this works. Come on, be cooperative." But the pain in my body was getting worse by the second. I could barely think. Tears were forming in my eyes from the intensity of it. A part of me just wanted it to stop, no matter what. So I stayed still. He placed his hand on my stomach, on the exact spot where the pain throbbed the most. My eyes shut tightly. I felt sick, scared, ashamed. Then, without warning, he gave me an injection in the arm. A few minutes later, the pain started to ease. "Are you still taking the medicine I gave you for nights?" he asked. "Yes," I replied faintly. "Good," he said. "Don't stop it. If your treatment gets interrupted, your condition might worsen." I nodded weakly. He wrote me a new prescription along with some dietary restrictions. My mother came in, helped me up, and we returned home. But the pain didn't go away. Every 2 or 3 nights, it would return. Sharp, sudden, agonizing. Each time, my mother would rush me back to that same clinic because at 3 a.m., we had no other option. My mother finally gave in. The doctor took me into his room and closed the door behind us. I don't know why, but something about this time felt different, more unsettling. What he did next was beyond anything I could have imagined. He turned to my mother and said, "We need to do an ultrasound to figure out what's causing this pain." She looked uncertain. "Where am I supposed to take her for that at this hour?" He replied, "I have a machine right here in the other room. If you don't mind, I can do it myself. And besides, is there really any shame between a doctor and a patient?" Then he added, "There's no nurse on night duty. No one agrees to stay this late, so I'll have to handle it myself." My mother was caught off guard, torn between worry and indecision. She looked at me. I was still writhing in pain and didn't know what to say. He continued, "I've already given her 3 injections. If the pain keeps returning, we have to know what's wrong." I could feel my mother hesitating. I was scared. I said, "Ami, please, come with me. I'll feel braver if you're by my side." Something inside me just didn't feel right. A kind of nervous panic I couldn't explain. But the doctor interjected, "Sorry, only the patient is allowed in that room. Your mom will wait outside." I looked at him, really looked, and the gleam in his eyes made my stomach churn. It wasn't the look of a doctor. It was something else. Something hungry. Why couldn't my mother stay with me? If he had no nurse present, why not allow her inside too? She glared at me, visibly frustrated. "It's always something with you, and always at night. Who knows what you eat at school that gives you these issues? You've even disturbed the doctor this late. If he's offering to do an ultrasound, let him do it. This isn't the time to throw a tantrum." I fell silent and walked into the ultrasound room, my heart pounding. He told me to change into a hospital gown. There was a small washroom in the room, so I went in and changed. The gown was oversized and uncomfortable, so I kept my scarf wrapped tightly around myself. When I came out, I felt his eyes scanning me in a way that made me want to disappear. He asked me to lie down on another folding bed next to the ultrasound machine. I did, but I was shaking inside. The pain was real, but the fear was stronger. Then he began. What followed in the name of a checkup was not medical. It was invasive, shameless, wrong. My entire body was drenched in sweat. His hands moved with cold calculation, and his face showed no empathy. Just filth, hidden behind a faint, eerie smile. I felt like prey. Vulnerable, cornered, and violated. Again, he gave me the same injection and kept smiling while looking into my eyes. In that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I'll never come back here again, even if the pain kills me. The next morning, I told my mother, please don't take me to that doctor again. Why? She asked. His treatment helped you, didn't it? No, I don't feel comfortable with him. She sighed. He's a doctor, Beta, and we're supposed to trust doctors. Besides, who else do we have around here? This is a new area, and your father isn't here. He left us here and went abroad. I'm alone. Where am I supposed to take you? She wasn't wrong. The neighborhood was still developing. Our colony had only a few homes scattered in a quiet stretch. That clinic was the only one around. What I couldn't figure out, though, was this. During the day, I was perfectly fine. Not even a hint of pain. But at night, as soon as I took the doctor's prescribed medicine, the cramps would return. He had given me a long list of pills, but especially for nighttime. This time, the pain hit so hard, I couldn't even get up from the bed. A little while later, I received a WhatsApp message, and what I saw made the blood drain from my face. The first time I had gone to that clinic for a headache, I had to register at the reception. I'd written my name down and given them my phone number. Since I always carried my phone, I'd provided my personal number. Once, my mother had even called the doctor from my phone to let him know I was in severe pain, and he told her to bring me in. But the video he sent me that night, it was enough to destroy me. It was from the same night he had performed that so-called ultrasound. I couldn't believe it. I was shaking, my whole body numb. My mother was still trying to help me sleep, doing everything she could to calm me down, but I was tossing and turning on the bed in agony, like a fish pulled from water. Seeing me like that, she rushed back to the clinic to get the doctor. He came back with her. I don't know what kind of injection he gave me, but within minutes, the pain was gone. Then he turned to my mother and said, "This isn't a solution. I suspect she has appendicitis. If the pain worsens, we might have to operate. There's no hospital nearby that can handle this at night." Then calmly, he added, "If you think it's best, she can stay at the clinic for 2 nights. The pain comes at night, and I'll be here to monitor her closely and treat her immediately. Painkillers aren't a cure, and the treatment I need to perform is something I can do here, not at your home. It's going to take time. You can't be expected to sit through it every night." Before my mother could respond, I spoke up. "No," I said firmly, I don't want any such treatment. I'm not staying here." I looked at my mother. "Let's go to the city in the morning. We can get a proper checkup at a hospital." The doctor's expression hardened. He stared at me with clear disapproval and said coldly, "It's your choice. But the hospital you're talking about, there have been a few shocking cases there recently. Patients went in for simple appendix surgeries and came out missing their kidneys." My mother gasped. They told the patients they'd removed the appendix. But 2 months later, when the patients developed complications, scans revealed 1 kidney was gone, just like that. My mother was visibly shaken. No, Beta," she said, turning to the doctor. "I trust you completely. You're an expert and you've helped her so much already. Please, you handle her case." She was literally thanking him. Meanwhile, that man stood there staring at me in silence, eyes scanning me like I was property, not a person. The idea of staying in that clinic for 2 nights felt like a nightmare. My mind was spiraling with fear, anxiety, and dark thoughts. He gathered his things and got ready to leave. But before walking out, he turned to me and said softly, "Check your WhatsApp tonight." That caught me off guard. "How did you—" I stopped mid-sentence. He smirked. "If you go to another doctor, I'll leak the video online." The video clearly showed my face. His didn't appear, but mine was unmistakable. He'd recorded it the night he did the ultrasound. I was horrified. My body froze. He added, "If you don't come to the clinic tomorrow night, You won't be able to face anyone. Think about that. Then he deleted the message and the video. I couldn't believe this was happening. The doctor I had once trusted was blackmailing me. I couldn't sleep that night. My thoughts were spinning. My body trembled. What should I do? Should I tell my mother? Should I expose the truth about this monster she believed was a healer? But then I feared, what if she went to the clinic and started shouting at him? What if he really released that video out of revenge? My reputation, my life, everything would be over. I was caught in a nightmare with no way out. And I knew, if I stepped into that clinic again, I would lose something I could never get back. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who to tell. Part of me wanted to confess everything to my mother, to finally speak the truth. But the doctor my mother thought was a savior, the man she constantly praised and thanked for living so close to our house, if only she knew the truth. Every time she said, "Thank God we have such a good doctor nearby. I don't have to take you far when you're in pain," it felt like a blade twisting in my heart. If she ever found out what this so-called savior had done to her daughter, I don't think she'd survive it. But the worst part was we were alone, just the two of us. My father was working abroad and anything could happen, and no one would know. The night passed in torment. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. What do I do now? Who can I tell? At some point, I must have drifted off. I didn't even know what time it was when my mother walked into my room and started scolding me. "This is no time to be sleeping. You don't even pray anymore. You've forgotten your religion completely. All you do is stare at your phone or the TV all day. No wonder you've fallen ill." I sat up, my eyes red and swollen from crying all night. My mother paused. She looked at my face and sat beside me. "Are you okay, Beta? Are you in pain again? Why do you look so pale?" How could I tell her? How could I say that the man she trusted had violated that trust in the most horrifying way? So I just shook my head. "No, Ami, I think the pain has just drained my energy, that's all." She helped me out of bed and made me sit down for breakfast. I didn't want to eat, but I forced myself to swallow each bite. Just then, a notification popped up on my phone. My hands froze. It was from the same number, the doctor. The teacup slipped from my hand and crashed onto the floor. Panicking, I opened the message. "Tonight, no excuses. Come to the clinic. You already know what I can do." He had added a laughing emoji at the end. I felt sick. I knew if I went, he'd tell my mother the same lie again, that I needed to stay 2 nights for treatment. And she would believe him without question. She trusted him more than she trusted me. She would leave me there, and God knows what would happen to me that night in that clinic. The thought alone made me shut my eyes in horror. I couldn't finish breakfast. I stood up and left the table. But just then, a sharp pain erupted in the lower part of my abdomen. It was so intense, I doubled over instantly. I wanted to stay silent, but the pain kept building, a storm inside me. If I told my mother, she'd take me back to the clinic, or worse, call him to come over. I didn't want that. I couldn't bear it. So I clenched my teeth and tried to endure it. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't even cry out loud. I didn't want her to hear me and come rushing in, but I couldn't take it anymore. I started sobbing. My knees gave out and I collapsed onto the floor, holding my stomach. I was in too much pain to even keep my eyes open. I blacked out. When I regained consciousness, I felt a hand brushing through my hair. Soft, slow, almost soothing. I thought it was my mother trying to wake me up. I'd forgotten that I'd even passed out. Then the hand moved across my cheek. Gently, but something about it felt wrong. A jolt went through me. Something didn't feel right. I slowly opened my eyes, and what I saw nearly made me scream. It was him, the doctor. He was kneeling beside me, gently stroking my hair. His face came closer. It aimed far too close. I could feel his breath on my skin. This was my own home. My room. Where was my mother? Why had she left me alone with him? I wanted to move. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't do anything. My body wouldn't respond. He looked at me with that same twisted smile. Then once again, he placed his hand on my cheek and slowly moved his fingers to my neck. I froze. His touch wasn't medical, it was predatory. I was writhing in pain, as if someone had placed burning coals on my body. Every nerve in me screamed. I wanted to push his filthy hand away from my skin, that hand which claimed ownership over me, as if I was something he possessed. Seeing me so helpless, he laughed. "Darling," he sneered, "why are you fighting it? Why hurt yourself trying to resist? Right now, you're completely under my control, Dad." He leaned closer. "I've given you an injection that's left you paralyzed. You won't be able to fight back. If I wanted to do everything right now and everything you'd never forget for the rest of your life, Asi, I could. Close your eyes and you'll see me. Open them. I'll still be there." He smiled like a predator. "Wouldn't it be better," he whispered, "if you just agreed to stay at the clinic for 2 nights? I could free you from every pain, every burden. All you have to do is give yourself to me." Even in that state, I let my tears fall, not from fear, but from defiance. I looked at him with fire in my eyes. They were red with rage. He would never win. My body was limp. The injection had stolen my strength at Gisselm, but I was still fully aware. My soul refused to break. I lay there silently weeping, while he sat beside me like a monster in a white coat. He ran his fingers through my hair, brushed my cheek with his palm, and slowly began to touch me in ways no doctor ever should. I wanted to scream. I wanted to scratch, hit, run. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even call out for my mother. This wasn't a doctor. He was a beast. A devil in disguise. Smiling, he said, "Don't be scared. Your mother's gone to the market. I sent her myself to get food, milk, and some medicine. She asked me to stay with you, to look after you. She trusts me to protect you if anything goes wrong." Then Juana say son. He leaned in, his lips brushed near my face. I felt like my soul was crying out. I tried with every ounce of my being to break free. I screamed in my mind for my mother, but my lips were frozen. I wanted to kill him, but I couldn't even lift a hand. He watched me struggle and chuckled. "What's wrong? Don't like it?" He tilted his head. "That's okay, most girls don't. But that doesn't stop me. Girls like you, beautiful, innocent, you're my weakness. I love spending time with girls like you." Then his voice dropped, colder, sharper. "You want to know why your pain only comes at night? Because I made sure of it. The injections I give you, they numb the pain just long enough. But those pills I told you to take every night?" He laughed. "They're slowly breaking you from the inside. If you keep taking them for a month, your body will completely shut down. But if you want to be truly healthy, you'll do what I say." Suddenly, the front door creaked. My mother had returned. He stood up quickly, slipped back into his professional mask, and sat down on the chair as if nothing had happened. Within half an hour, my body started regaining some strength. I could feel movement returning to my limbs. As the paralysis wore off, I watched him rise to leave, but before he walked out, he turned to my mother and said one last thing. "Make sure she comes to the clinic tonight. It's important. If she doesn't, things won't go well for her." And just like that, he left. I was shattered, broken. My body was trembling. My soul felt poisoned. My mother sat beside me, confused and worried, not understanding the war I was fighting silently inside. Later that day, we received a call from my father overseas. I finally broke down. Sobbing uncontrollably, I spoke to him. "Abba, I'm not well. Please come back. Ami keeps taking me to that same local doctor, and I can't do it anymore." I had already told them I wanted proper treatment in the city, but no one was listening. I was crying so hard, begging my father on the phone, that even he grew worried. But before I could say more, my mother snatched the phone from my hand. "What's wrong with you?" she snapped. "Your father is alone in a foreign country, and this is how you behave? Have you lost your mind? Shame on you. I haven't told him anything about your condition so far. Besides, because I didn't want him to worry. But what could I do? I missed my father so much. I cried silently, feeling completely alone. I tried to explain it to my mother in subtle words. I tried to tell her that the doctor wasn't what he seemed on that son, that something was very wrong with him, but she wouldn't listen. She trusted him blindly. As night approached, so did the fear. The time to go to the clinic was getting closer, and I knew if I didn't go, there could be consequences. My mother insisted, I think I should leave you at the clinic tonight. That way, if your pain flares up, the doctor can treat you right away. But I had made her promise. If I go, you're staying with me. You can't leave me there alone. She agreed, Oma. Okay, I won't leave. I'll stay with you. Reluctantly, I went with her to the clinic. When the doctor saw me walk in, his face lit up, almost too brightly. There was something twisted in the way he smiled. He asked me to lie down on the bed and began talking to my mother about my condition. Moments later, the pain started again. He turned to my mother and said she should wait outside so he could examine me. I immediately interrupted. No, Ami, don't go. I told you before, you have to stay with me. If you leave, I won't stay either. But my mother, as always, trusted his words more than mine. She believed he was just doing his job. She stepped out, and just like that, he looked at me. Not like a doctor, like a hunter who had finally trapped his prey. I cursed him in my heart. This man who had destroyed my peace, my safety, my trust in the world. And I feared what might come next. The look in his eyes told me I wasn't the first girl he'd done this to. Maybe this was why men like him opened clinics in quiet neighborhoods where hospitals were far away, so they could prey on girls with no help, no protection. He walked toward me slowly. I was lying on the bed, a drip in my arm. Without warning, he grabbed both my arms and held me down. His grip was tight. I could feel it digging into my skin. I wanted to scream, but I had no strength left. Pain shot through my wrist, where the drip needle was buried, and my stomach was still aching. He laughed. Let's see how long you can resist. Even goats know when their time is up. He pulled out another syringe. It looked like a sedative. If he injected me, I wouldn't even know what he'd done to me afterward. Desperate, I pleaded, please, please don't do this, I begged. You must have a mother, maybe a sister. Why are you doing this to me? Why destroy my life? My mother believes in you, I cried. She sees you like a son. She trusts you with everything. Don't betray her like this. What did I ever do to you? For God's sake, don't ruin me. My voice cracked. I raised my trembling hands in front of him, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down my face like rivers. He looked at the syringe in his hand and flicked it with his finger. Then coldly he said, the more you cry, the more I enjoy it. This is exactly what I want, to see you suffer, to watch you beg. Girls like you, you're like butterflies, and I love crushing butterflies. Your tears don't move me. Your begging doesn't matter. Stop wasting your breath. I will get what I want from you, one way or another. I screamed for my mother, desperately calling out to her, but all she said from the other side of the curtain was, it's okay, Beta. The doctor is just treating you. You'll feel better soon. She truly believed he was helping me. She was standing just a few feet away, praying for me, while that man was preparing to destroy me. Before I could utter another word, he covered my mouth with his hand. Through my tears, I stared at the curtain, helpless, watching the shadow of my mother praying, thinking her daughter was being healed. And then he slapped me so hard that the room went dark. My ears rang. My head spun. He grabbed me by the hair, pulled my face toward him, and stared at me with rage. In one hand, he held a syringe like a weapon and brought it close to my neck. I thought I was about to die. I was crying, I'd say, but it didn't matter to him. He jabbed the needle into my neck. I felt the cold sting of it pierce my skin. A burning sensation spread through my veins, paralyzing me once again. He removed his hand from my mouth, but now he began his assault. His hands were on me. His grip tightened around my neck. I thought it was over. I thought this was it, but that I'd lose everything. One final image flashed before my eyes: my mother and my father. Their faces blurred as my vision faded, and then darkness. I heard a commotion, distant at first, like echoes underwater, yelling, screaming, curses being thrown. But I was gone, floating. As I slowly regained consciousness, I felt a stinging sensation across my entire body, as though someone had driven needles into my skin. My pulse raced. My mind spun. I was awake, but the fear crept back in like poison. Was I alive? And if I was, did that monster do what he said he would? I kept my eyes shut and started screaming. Screaming from the depths of my soul. Help! Please, someone help me! I felt arms around me, holding me down. I fought them, flailing, terrified, until I heard a familiar voice. My mother's voice. I opened my eyes, and for a moment I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I blinked. Once. Twice. My mother was there, holding me tightly to her chest. Her face was red and soaked with tears. I turned to my right and saw my father standing beside me. His face was filled with pain and rage. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Years of fear poured out in one night. My mother whispered over and over again, "It's okay now, Beta. Nothing happened. Your father arrived just in time. You're safe. You're okay." She held me close, her voice shaking. "Forgive me," she cried. "Forgive me. If only God had given me more wisdom. I would have known. I would have seen it in that man's eyes. I would have listened to you." She was weeping uncontrollably, hitting her own forehead in regret. But I reached out and held her hand. I didn't blame her, not anymore. My father, on the other hand, was holding back his anger. "That's enough," he said to my mother, his voice low but firm. "Stop putting on a show. You should have opened your eyes and ears. I trusted you. And you failed our daughter." The nurse rushed in, seeing me so overwhelmed, and gave me a sedative injection to calm me down. Later, when I returned home and began to feel more stable, I finally learned the truth. My mother had still been sitting in the clinic that night when my father arrived straight from the airport. On his way home, he passed the clinic and saw her sitting outside. Suspicious, he went inside. And when he saw the size of that so-called clinic, a dim, narrow room run by a lone man with no proper staff, his anger boiled over. He turned to my mother and said, "Is this where you've been bringing my daughter? I send you money so you can treat her here?" "How could you bring my daughter to this dungeon of a clinic?" my father thundered. "Are hospitals in the city all shut down that you had to rely on this place?" Just then, the door burst open, and standing there was my father. The doctor's face turned pale. He froze where he stood, the color draining from his face. He knew the game was over. My father had walked in at the worst, or perhaps the best, possible moment. One look at the way the doctor had positioned himself over me, and he knew something was horribly wrong. I was unconscious, completely limp, lying helplessly on the bed. Without saying a word, my father charged forward and grabbed the doctor by the collar, and then he hit him hard. When we got home, I finally told my father everything. I told him how the doctor had blackmailed me, how he had installed hidden cameras in the clinic room. That was all it took. My father understood the entire picture. He had no more doubts. He immediately took me to a major hospital in the city, where I underwent thorough testing. The results were shocking, not because something was wrong, but because everything was normal. There was no illness, no disease, nothing that ever required treatment. The pain I had been experiencing was artificially induced, caused by the injections and pills that monster had been giving me. He was keeping me sick on purpose, just to keep me coming back. When I told my father this, his rage knew no bounds. He returned to the clinic. This time, he didn't come alone. He locked the doctor inside. Then he informed the neighbors. He told them what this so-called healer had done, how he had preyed on girls in the name of medicine. People were furious. They surrounded the clinic, and then my father opened the door again. The doctor tried to attack him in panic, but my father picked up a chair and smashed it against his head. He grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out of the clinic and into the street. People watched as my father pulled that man through the alley, beaten and exposed. And slowly, voices began to rise. Other girls, victims who had once stayed silent, began to speak. One by one, they stepped forward and smeared black ink on his face. My father stood tall and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Men like him aren't doctors, they're empais. They're wolves in white coats. They prey on innocence, on trust, and destroy lives. These parasites should be ripped from our society and thrown away before they poison anyone else." At last, I stepped forward. I slapped him across the face with all the strength I had left. And then, we handed him over to the police. The authorities took swift and severe action. He was charged with multiple crimes and sentenced to a long-term imprisonment. Back at home, my father held me tightly. He turned to my mother, his anger still simmering beneath the surface. "How could you let this happen?" he asked. "I thought you were a responsible mother. I thought you'd be the kind of woman who watches everything, who notices when something is wrong. But you trusted a stranger over your own daughter." My mother sobbed. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know," she cried. "I never meant for this to happen." Over time, my father's anger began to cool, but one thing had changed forever. He never left us alone again. He took us with him. He made sure I was never unsafe again. I stopped taking the pills that doctor had given me, and soon I was completely healthy. That man, that monster in a lab coat, now sits behind bars, paying for what he did. And me? My father arranged my marriage with the son of his close friend in Dubai. Today, I live a happy, peaceful life in a home filled with love, safety, and dignity, and I've never looked back.